Yeah, well, it's coming to the end of 2020, and we have to.
Bless buddy MMA gods.
Yeah, well, 2020 has been a fucking shit year for most people.
Shit tip.
Yeah, it's been quite shit, but for the UFC, it's been a brilliant year. It managed to get in Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone at the very start, right before COVID. COVID makes everything shit itself. The only real sport that ends up coming up on their screen is the UFC. Brings a lot more fresh eyes to the UFC. Then the NBA and all that comes back, but the UFC was the first to do it, and because they had some balls to do it, the other ones were too pussy to do so. Now, we have to pick our fighter of the year, and it can be male or female, doesn't matter, but we're going to have a first, second, and third place, and we're going to explain why. I want you to explain your fighter of the year, and I'll explain my fighter of the year. It's difficult. It's difficult,
It is
right?
so difficult. But my fighter of the year, I know it's crazy, but I want to say Justin Gaethje
Right, okay.
because that dude is just came out of nowhere, was a smashing machine, and he took up probably one of the biggest career opportunities against Ferguson. What do you do when you take this guy who just loves to bang, and then he goes, fucking, I'll fight probably one of the most feared men in my division, in the most stacked division, and just go, you know what, let's fucking go, son. 3 weeks, like 3 weeks out.
Yeah.
And then just went for it. And he put on a tough as nails fight against a guy whose everybody's face looks like they look like hitting a train wreck after fighting him. And then he just said, and then he got given the belt, and he took it off, and he says, "Nah, I want the real one." You know, a lot of fighters are very happy just to get the interim belt.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Nah, I want the real one. I'm gonna take this a step further. Give me the probably, arguably, the most dominant champion in UFC. Arguably one of the most. Okay, that's another story for another. The most, arguably one of the most, top 5. You take on a guy who hasn't lost, almost hasn't lost a round, unless you want to talk the Conor McGregor fight. And then he goes, nah, you know what, let's do it. And then he showed up, and he, wasn't his best performance on the night, but he went out there and, he capitalized on it. He capitalized on momentum. Now, say what you want about Justin Gaethje. He's got a couple of losses, but he's a man who just does not fear anyone, and I feel like we need to stop counting him out after that Khabib fight. I feel like he could have a very, very good 2021 if he just gets a little bit more experience under his belt, because I want to see him fight. I want to see him fight Michael Chandler. And I want to. So he's really my pick for fighter of the year, just for putting up his hand, go up against probably one of the baddest men in the most stacked division, in a time when there wasn't anything going on, in the most unprecedented time ever, and he capitalized on it. So if it's not for his actual, being the most active, but what he did in that time is what's so significant.
So that's your number one pick.
Especially also when he was such an underdog going into that fight as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
What about number 2 and number 3?
Okay, number 2.
You gotta keep it brief, dude. You gotta keep it brief.
Yeah, I gotta keep it brief now. Sorry.
No, you're okay.
Number 2, Kevin Holland. Yeah. Fucking everyone was sleeping on him, and he was getting all these fights. He just got all these fights in, but he needs to talk less, man.
No, I think he needs to talk more.
You want to
talk more? Some more shit.
I like it when they talk bullshit in press conferences. I love it, but I don't like it when they talk in the cage. Leave talking outside the cage. You know what I mean?
A lot of the trash talkers always have, but yeah, I get what you mean. What's number 3?
Okay, number 3, Khabib. Got to say Khabib. Everything that man went through, losing your dad. I mean, losing your dad, not being able to fight, going to quarantine. You come back and fight, and then you make light work of Justin Gaethje again, even though he's my number 1. I gotta give it to him, man. Everything that man went through, and breaking his foot is again 3 weeks before a fight, losing the one person who you care about the most, not having your head coach there, It's again, it's not. My picks aren't because the fights and what they had to go through outside the cage.
Yeah.
That man is a steel fortress, and he is an enigma. And I believe that maybe he might not be the pick of the, even though he's not number 1 of the year, he's going to be in my top 5 all time. Okay, so there you go, Jack.
All right, so my fight of the year picks are, number 1, I've got to have Kevin Holland. And he's not a champion or anything like that, but he's fought 5 times this year, won all of them, right? One of them was by split decision, right? I think it was Darren Stewart. One of them was a win in round 3. Those other 3 fights were all round 1 finishes, right? He even tried to set up a submission underground fight. Well, he was called by Chael Sonnen to do a submission underground fight at the end of this year with Anthony Rumble Johnson, who's easily 205 plus. Apparently, the UFC vetoed that, and they're not going to be doing a jiu-jitsu match with Rumble Johnson, but that would have been sick. That's going to happen with Ryan Bader instead. Ryan Bader versus Rumble Johnson's going to be at Submission Underground. My second pick has got to be Stipe. Now, I know he only fought once this year, but by beating Daniel Cormier for the second time out of the trilogy, he has to be the greatest heavyweight of all time. You know, there's a few ones, Cain Velasquez, you maybe put in Fedor and things like that, but I gotta stick with Stipe. The people he's beaten, the fashion he's beat them, I think Stipe is the greatest heavyweight of all time. And not only that, it's in a pandemic. He's a full-on firefighter during a pandemic, during there's bushfires going on at the same time. He also overcame an eye injury as well, because, you know, Daniel likes to do his eye pokes. I mean, so does Stipe. They've done it to each other. But that's why I've got to have him in number 2. By him beating Daniel Cormier, I really think he cemented himself as the greatest heavyweight champion of all time. Now, number 3, there's a few candidates for that, to be honest. I was in between Khabib and Israel Adesanya, but I've got to pick Adesanya because he fought Romero, arguably one of the scariest motherfuckers on the earth, right? No, it wasn't the most interesting fight, but I believe it takes 2 to tango, and you know, if you don't have a dance partner, it's quite hard to be a counterpuncher with someone that doesn't punch, you know? And he had so much riding on Paulo Costa, right? Because everyone was expecting Paulo's going to steamroll Adesanya, and I understand he just picked him apart. Second round, downloaded enough information as he needed, and just went in and smashed Paulo. You know, for someone that is as scary as Paulo, also formerly beating Yoel Romero, and that was a very close fight. Adesanya did so well. It sets him up for Jan Blachowicz and possibly a John Jones fight in the future. So he's got to be number 3. And to be honest, he could be arguably any of these guys in my 3 could be number 1 fighter of the year for me. It's just I have to put Kevin Holland because 5 times, 5 MMA fights in one of the best promotions in the world in 1 year. And most of them, 3 of them, so that's 60% of them, were all finishes in the first round. I have to give it to Kevin Holland. It's insane. Also tried to set up a submission underground against Rumble Johnson. He's a madman. I like it. I think he did very well. Yeah.
He's got a lot of hype for himself. I reckon 2021 could be... He's got a lot of hype for himself, and I reckon 2021 could be a big year for him.